everyone, this is Grandmaster Damián Lemos here for iChess.net, and welcome to my new video. Today we'll be studying some power play by one of the best, if not the best, of all time, Garry Kasparov. And the first game we'll analyze is Kasparov against Damián, and we know Grandmaster Damian is a solid player, so this game is probably going to impress you. D4, Damian plays E6. This is a tricky move order. We can still play E4 and we have a French defense, but Garry wants to play in D4 territory with C4, D5, Knight C3, Bishop E7. We're playing a Queen's Gambit declined, and Bishop E7 is a good move. Knight F6 is also possible, but here White usually takes, and he'll play this system where he develops Bishop D3 and Knight E2, which is supposed to be good for White because later on he'll play F3 E4. So why am I saying this? Well, because when he plays Bishop E7, here we have to play Knight F3. I mean, there's no way we play Bishop G5, of course, and once we place the Knight on F3, we no longer have the Knight G2 variation I just said. So Black plays Knight F6, and here we can play this variation as White, but as I said, E3, Bishop D3, we don't have Knight E2. So that is why Black plays Bishop E7. This is a good thing to know. So Knight F3, Knight F6, Garry plays Bishop F4, which is one of the most aggressive setups against the Queen's Gambit declined, also known as the orthodox defense. Black castles, E3, and C5. Usually Black has to go for an active position, otherwise we'll have a slight advantage as White. Notice that we are developing all our pieces, and we also got our bishop outside the pawn chain. So C5 makes a lot of sense. Pawn takes, bishop takes, and Queen C2. This is all theory. This move is good because apart from natural development moves on the king side, we can also try queenside castling, therefore putting some pressure on D5 as well. Knight C6, A3, and Queen A5. If you play this position, you need to know some theory beforehand, otherwise you see this position and looks a bit scary already. Things like Knight B4 are there, also a move like D4, and most important, you have to know theory because if you want to get some advantage, you have to castle in this position, and placing the king on the queen side looks a bit risky for White. For instance, that A3 pawn could be a target, but on the other hand, I also see some benefits for White in this position. Now we have opposite kings. We can also try firing a kingside attack. This makes a lot of sense. His kingside is kind of given up. The only defender he has is Knight F6. And another drawback I see in Black's position is the fact that Bishop C8 is inside the pawn chain, and it's tough for Black to develop this bishop. So here he plays Bishop E7. Well, he has to protect D5 somehow. He's also removing the bishop from C5 just in case. So Bishop E7, Garry here he plays H4. This is something I love from Garry's his games. He always play with the initiative, and that's something key. We have other moves here, like knight d2, which is a solid alternative. If d4 we have stuff like knight v3, and I think we are winning a pawn, but those are careful moves. They are possible, of course, but after all, having the initiative should be better, and if we play aggressive moves like this one, our opponent has more chances of making a mistake. So I like this h4. Black takes on c4. If rook d8, I think there's no need to slow down. We play c4. If he wants to take it, that's going to favor us. So d takes, bishop takes, and b6. Black is trying to equalize by natural means. He's not trying to attack on the queen side. All he wants is to play bishop a6, connect his rooks, and hopefully equalize. If he played a move like e5, this looks aggressive, but it has a huge price. Now this diagonal is open, and we can basically take on f6, followed by knight d5. But of course the main issue is this diagonal being opened. So b6, and here is where Garry starts playing his moves. We can of course play something like king b1, even c4, but then we allow stuff like this. He'll play a quick rook c8, and that position is more or less equal. Garry plays knight c5. This is a great move already. We are putting an eye on the h7 pawn, and if he plays a move like h6, first of all, we don't have to move the knight. I mean, if he takes, then the h-file opens. This is too dangerous for black. And another idea when we play knight c5 is to play a move like knight e4. The purpose of this move is to get rid of the only defender of the king side, which is knight f6. So knight c5. Damián plays bishop a6 and knight c4. Each move we play, we have a threat. Here, for instance, knight takes f6 followed by queen takes h7 is an idea. Black plays c6. Once he advances like this, he's weakening his position. But if he plays knight takes e4, queen takes, this looks already devastating for black. Queen takes h7 coming, so is queen takes c6. And after a move like c6, well, maybe queen takes, it's not a good idea yet, but I see other moves like knight takes f7, destroying his king side. h5 is always there, and I feel e6 is my main target now. So black is facing a tough position. He plays c6, knight takes, bishop takes, knight e4. After these little maneuvers we played, we achieved a lot. Now, as we know, his king side is weak, and we are pretty close to opening the h-file. King b1, I also like this move. It is good when you attack to slow down sometimes and know when to play these great moves like king b1. Before he plays something like rook c8, before he creates some kind of counterplay on the c-file, we play king b1, and then we continue with h5. We are not worried about a move like this, because we can still play c4, and h5 is actually helping us. So Damián plays queen b7, h5, we are almost there. rook ac8, we take, and well, here black plays knight b4. Here you can possibly, if you want, try analyzing this position, finding the best continuation for white. I'll also stop talking for 5 seconds and then I'll continue the analysis. So after knight b4, we have some action going, but before analyzing knight b4, let's see what happens if pawn takes. Well, the other pawn is definitely too bad. I mean, e6 is hanging. Even a move like queen c4 is probably crushing. I mean, if he takes, it has to be with the h pawn. We play the simple queen c3. He has to play f6. Now, I like rook h6, doubling up on the h-file. Queen b3 is also there. He's almost defendless. I mean, he has to play knight d8, which is too passive, and I would say white is close to winning already. So, black, instead of playing that passive line, he wants to play knight b4. But Garry plays pawn takes h7, king h8. Well, king g7, well, it's another move, of course. Bishop e5 check, f6, and here knight takes f6 is winning. Our queen on c2 is hanging. Here we understand how important king b1 was. I mean, he takes on f2. If this bishop takes, rook takes, here we have queen takes c8. And after this, well, we can also trade and play this endgame with an extra pawn. But here we have rook d7 check. This is another thing I love when I see tactical games, and I tell this in all my lessons. In between moves, they usually make a difference. And rook d7, this is absolutely crushing. Of course, here we win. So king g7 it's not working. We'll see king h8 is also losing. This requires some great moves by white. Bishop e5 check, f6 is the only move. And once more, white sacrifices his queen with knight takes f6. Amazing stuff. His first rank is absolutely weak. We have some discoveries coming, and black is defenseless. What happens if he takes our queen? We simply play knight d5 check. Bishop f6. Well, rook takes. We can just play knight takes. And once more, we have a discovered coming soon. So bishop f6, knight takes, queen g7. And it looks like he is defending somehow. But we play knight g4 and we grab his queen. So he plays bishop takes f6. He's not taking our queen on c2. Bishop takes, and here black resigns. If rook takes, we simply play a takes b4. And the key is rook takes c2 runs into rook d8 check, followed by h8 queen winning. And if he plays anything else, we have like 3 extra pawns, not to mention his king is already weak. So this is absolutely losing, therefore black gives up. So let's continue with our next game. Now we'll see Garry playing from the black side, and we'll have a King's Indian. We reach the King's Indian from a weird move order. White plays the English with c4, c6, knight c3, bishop c7, d4, and now after knight f6, e4, we have the King's Indian defense. This game is Kabelek against Kasparov. We know in the King's Indian we have to play d6, knight f3, black castles, and white plays h3. which is also known as the Makogonov system. White, of course, can also play bishop e2, which is by far the main line in this position. This is the classical system. You probably saw this position. Oops, not knight f3. Usually white plays f3. And by doing this, his bishop is both guarding the king side and also looking at the queen side, where white is going to attack. On the other hand, black also is having an attack, this time on the king side. And you'll find a lot of games from Garry playing this line as well. This is the main line. But in this game, white plays h3, black plays e5, and white advances with d5. As black, we don't have to be afraid of aberration like this, because white is never winning the e5 pawn. If he plays this, we just take on e4, and we simply get our pawn back. Even in this simple position, I feel black has some kind of advantage, because we can always jump to d4, whereas white, he can try jumping to d5, but we have that square covered with a move like c6. That is the slight advantage we have. So if white wants to go for some edge, he has to play d5, and Garry plays knight to a6. A well-known maneuver in the King's Indian, trying to play knight c5. You'll see some players playing a5 first, trying to control b4, and then knight a6, knight c5. I like this move because it looks faster, and of course we can play knight c5 followed by a5 later. White plays bishop e3, and here Garry plays knight h5. This is a well-known King's Indian concept. Once the center is closed, we have the right of playing a move like f5, opening that position and trying to get some kingside play. Usually in King's Indian, we try playing on the king side. That's something we should know. So white plays knight h2, a weird looking move, but of course he's trying to stop us from playing f5. For instance, if we do play it, he takes. Now we cannot take back with the she pawn. That was our initial idea. Knight h5 is hanging, and if we take with the piece, he can play c4. And of course we are losing. The same happens after rook takes. c4, and we are absolutely losing. So before playing f5, Garry plays queen e8. Now the queen is protecting the knight. I mean f5. If pawn takes, we'll play she takes f5, bishop e2, and knight f4. We would be delighted if he took our knight on f4 now, because then we are completely dominating on dark squares, and white he's left with his worst bishop. Bishop e2 is crashing into the pawn chain, and bishop e3 was clearly his best bishop. So he plays bishop f3, he's not taking, f5, and here white plays h4. Why is he playing h4? Well, he's trying to play a move like this, but here we just take the pawn on h3, and after bishop c2, the knight on h3 is not trapped. We play f4, first defending the knight on h3, and second, we also open the king side, so we win in every sense. So he plays h4, queen e7. Here is where Garry's magic starts. We attack the h4 pawn, he plays c3, and it looks like our knight on f4 is actually trapped. We can always play a move like knight h5, but that means losing a pawn, and honestly I don't see much counterplay for us. So after c3 we have a huge decision for black, and it's either playing a move like knight h3, which is weird, and I mean the knight there we know in the long run we'll lose it, or play something else. I prefer playing active, and we have an advantage here. The advantage is his king is in the center, so maybe we can consider sacrificing and opening that position, because as we said, his king is in the middle and we have some development. So I like what Garry played, knight b4, amazing stuff. Now we have a threat, jumping to d3, and if he takes on f4, apart from this move, which is already something we should consider, this is also interesting. Well, no matter what he plays, I mean, we'll have a big counterplay. The analysis says white has to take on e5, which is a tough move to play, but let's say he plays knight takes. Here, after this, look at this position. Despite being down a piece, every single piece is playing for us, whereas white is with his king on e1, and his chances are not great, in my opinion. I mean, I prefer playing as black, because the initiative, as you probably know, is much more relevant than material. So, after this knight b4, white played queen b3. This is the practical point of view. White is not a computer. He's a strong player, but he's not a computer, and he's not able to find every single move to defend well. So he prefers not taking on f4, not opening that position, and he tries castling as soon as possible. But knight d3 check. We are checking him. Of course, we stop queenside castling. And most important, we make sure he stays with the king in the center. So f4, bishop d2. Of course, white is never taking on f4. That's helping us. No matter how we retake on f4, we'll open lines, and we are also destroying his king side. So he plays bishop d2. And here Garry plays what it looks like the best continuation. The concept remains the same. We have to open that position no matter what to exploit his disadvantage, that being his king in the center. And in the game, Garry goes for pawn takes, and after pawn takes, he plays that positional sacrifice, rook takes f3. We will see this in a minute, but first let's consider another move, knight takes f2. This was even better. As you can see, white will have to defend, moving his king, and he has to take on f2, by the way. If this, we can simply play this, and everything is hanging. I feel rook takes f3 is coming anytime soon, so he has to play king takes f2, knight d3 check, king g2, and okay, I mean, he has some chances, of course, but having the king on g3, having the queen like on the other side of the board, we should have something here. And if we play this powerful move, rook f4, we make sure we open that position. And he's going to have a tough time defending this one. The idea, of course, is queen takes h4, and if he takes, we bring more pieces to the attack. Queen takes, bishop h3. I think this plays itself, despite being down a piece, yeah, he has to sacrifice his rook here, otherwise we play queen c3. And white has some defending chances here, but we have extra pawns. Material-wise, we are ahead as well, but most important, we have the initiative. We are the ones attacking, so white here, or even before we have this position, he has a lot of chances of making a mistake. So that is why this knight takes f2 was even better. I mean, and I'm not talking about what the ancients says. I'm talking about practical chances. Unless white has cold nerves, he's likely to make mistakes in this position, because it's easier to attack. When you defend, you have to play only moves sometimes, and that's very tough. So let's go back to the game. Pawn takes c3, f takes, and rook takes f3. I like this move. He has to play knight takes and bishop c4. Our knights are too powerful. This pin is quite annoying for white, especially because he cannot get rid of it. He plays rook a f1. White's dream is to migrate to the queen side. The thing is, that's impossible because we control both c2 and c1. So Garry plays the simple rook f8. Now the idea is to play queen f7, and that would be winning. And white plays knight d1. Looks like the best move. First, attacking the knight on b4. Now the queen might help on the third rank. Maybe he can play knight e3 as well. Believe it or not, this is not the best move for white. His best try was bishop e3 and, well, trying to escape via d2. This is according to the ancients, but as we said, when we're playing a real game, the practical chances are the ones that count, and in a real game, if I have this position as white, if I'm facing this kind of pressure, trust me, I would play knight e1. I'm attacking the knight on b4, I'm trying to play knight e3. As I said, the queen somehow helps on the third rank. This is the human move, knight d1. But okay, after knight d1, Garry plays the simple queen f7, bishop e3. There was no way to defend the knight on f3. Bishop takes, king d2, and queen d7. Simple chess. Now we are trying to enter via h3. Rook c1, queen h3. Material is kind of equal. I mean, of course I prefer two pieces over a rook, but let us say it is equal. It would be better for white if he had the king on b1 or a1, but unfortunately his king is still an issue, and that is why white is lost. He plays a3. Now, we cannot protect both knights at once, but we can play bishop takes e4. Rooks are facing each other, so rook takes f8, bishop takes, a takes b4. And here black wins with the simple queen h2 check. This king is lacking squares, he cannot cover the check on f2, and if he plays king c3, which is what white played, we have the amazing knight c1. Attacking the queen, also knight e2 check is an idea. We have queen c2 in some variations, And well, if bishop takes c1, we can simply play queen takes g1, and this position is absolutely lost. The bishop pair is deciding the game, and not to mention his king remains an issue. So I really love this game by Garry. We have much more to see. This would take, of course, a lot of time, so we'll finish this video right here, and I promise I'll have other parts of this video to continue analyzing this power play by probably the best chess player of all times, Garry Kasparov. I hope you enjoyed this material. I hope you could learn something, and I also want to see you guys in my next videos. Thank you.